Hello everyone, this is The Last Word and I'm Maria Shakil. India has inched one step closer towards one nation, one election with the cabinet nod to the proposal today. Sources say the bill for holding simultaneous polls may be introduced as early as the upcoming winter session. This comes after the report of the high-level committee, which was headed by former President Ram Nath Kovind, was placed before the Union Cabinet. While the government is pitching this as a move to strengthen the democracy, the opposition is calling it a poll-related gimmick. Union Home Minister Amit Shah says one nation, one poll will bolster India's democracy through clean and financially efficient elections. MIM chief Asaduddin Owaisi, on the other hand, terms one nation, one election as a solution in search of a problem. The move will be implemented only after 2029, after a long, winding, complicated legislative process is completed. The first challenge is, of course, to create a political consensus. Here's the complete lowdown. And also on the show, we ask one step, one nation, one election, a step towards strengthening democracy, really? That's the question that we ask on the panelists who will be joining me shortly.
One nation, one election के लिए देश को आगे आना होगा.
A clear intent put in motion a day after the Modi 3.0 completes 100 days. The cabinet approved the One Nation, One Election proposal, also coinciding with the first phase of assembly polls in Jammu and Kashmir.
High-level committee recommendations on One Nation, One Election. Those recommendations have been accepted today by the Union Cabinet.
The go-ahead comes 6 months after a high-level committee chaired by former President Ram Nath Kovind submitted its report on the One Nation, One Election plan to the President of India. The opposition was quick to hit out at what the government termed as a unanimous decision. One Nation, One Election, the Kovind panel consultations, 47 parties responded, 32 parties in favor, 15 parties in opposition.
ये सिर्फ चुनाव जब बात है कोई ना कोई कुछ मुद्दा नहीं मिल रहा उनको ऐसी चीजें बात करने के लिए इश्यू को डाइवर्ट करने के लिए वो बात करते हैं.
One nation, one election was a thought which was announced well before the general elections of 2024. So anybody who's saying that it because of the election results have actually given us a historic mandate, and that's why we are able to take such historic decisions.
And it isn't just the timing that is being questioned. Questions are being raised on the government's claim that 80% of the respondents in the consultative process supported the move.
देश में करीब 80% of the respondents who responded during the consultation process, 80% से ज़्यादा लोगों ने इसको बहुत positive support दिया है.
80%, which 80%? Where do they belong to? Did they come to me? Did they come to ordinary people? The rickshaw pullers, the vendors?
The cabinet nod is just the first step in what is a long winding process. Step 1, amend 5 other articles of the Constitution. Step 2, bill must be passed in Parliament with 2/3 majority. Step 3, amend the 1951 Representation of People's Act. Step 4, 50% of the states must pass the bill. Implementing One Nation, One Election requires 2/3 majority in Parliament, since it involves several amendments of the Constitution. While the NDA has a simple majority in both houses of Parliament, getting 2/3 of majority in either house could prove a challenge. Of the 245 seats in Rajya Sabha, the NDA has 112, the opposition parties 85. For a 2/3 majority, the government needs at least 164 votes. Even in the Lok Sabha, the NDA has 292 of the 545 seats. The 2/3 majority mark stands at 364. There are two opinions about One Nation, One poll. The opposition is vehement in its opposition, saying it is detrimental to the democratic as well as the federal structure. The government, on its part, believes that with consultation, it will be able to explain that administrative costs and timing is critical for the country in nation building. With camera person Prem, Sunil Prabhu, NDTV.
Dr. S.Y. Qureshi is former Chief Election Commissioner of India. We have Mohan Kumar Mangalam, National Spokesperson of the Congress, Pradeep Bhandari, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Professor Sandeep Shastri is the National Coordinator with Lokniti Network. Dr. Qureshi, beginning with you, will it really strengthen democracy, the argument being put forth by the government?
Well, there are pros and cons of the proposal, which I've been saying for the last 10 years. First of all, the Prime Minister, when he mooted the idea originally, he said he wants a national debate on it and a consensus. The debate has gone on for 10 years, consensus has not been arrived at. Now, in the desperation, government said, forget about the consensus, we are going to do it. And that is how the Kovind committee was formed. Now, about the proposal itself, there are pros and cons. The pros are, for all 3 tiers, the voter is the same. The polling station is the same. The people who manage conduct the elections are the same, and the security apparatus is the same. So therefore, it makes sense that you go there and press 3 machines, right? So this is the pro of it. The con is people have only the one power. They are very powerless. They have only power to vote, and because of the election, when Neta comes to their house with folded hands, and otherwise we have seen for 5 years MLAs and MPs go missing. And people have to put posters, Gumshuda ki talash, missing. So therefore, at least what people want is important. I remember hearing Mr. Bhartarihari Mahtab, who was BJD MP then, now changed the party. He said, let's ask the people. And people, according to him, want frequent election. And I heard a similar sentiment in a youth parliament in Pune, where 5,000 youth. And one girl from Chhattisgarh said कि जब चुनाव आता है गरीब के पेट में पुलाव आता है तो repeated election is good for the poor. One argument given was a lot of expenditure happened. In 2019 the estimate was 60,000 crore. Now it is 1 lakh crore. I think it's good for the economy. For politicians, money gets recycled and goes to the poor. That's good for the economy, and repeatedly it is happening. Therefore, it's not so simple. And now coming to the COVID committee report itself. First of all, somebody emphasized 80%. I heard on another channel that because it is 80% because you were asked to answer only in Hindi and English. No Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam or any other language. The number would have been different. Important point to take note of. Now, COVID committee's report, it may be high-level committee, but we have to see the level of the recommendation. The recommendations are amusing. The committee said that when we talk of simultaneous election, we are only talking of Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha. Why are we not talking of Panchayati Raj? Now, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha together, so Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha together are 5,000 legislators. The one you are excluding are 3 million, 30 lakhs. And they say that their election will be after 100 days. Now, an election after 100 days is not simultaneous election. It's a separate independent election with an independent bandobast. And that too after your people haven't got over the fatigue of conducting the biggest exercise in the world. And you are sent again 3 months later.
Let me bring...
let me finish it quickly. One more important thing, the people. Now, there will be lakhs of people who will not be able to come to vote after 3 months because they are servants somewhere, mazdoor somewhere, so they take leave. They can't come back 3 months later as a second time. Denying them their voting right is a big infringement on their constitutional right.
Okay. So let me bring in the politicians now before I go to Professor Sandeep Shastri. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, what exactly is Congress's concern? If it is about logistics, that is the headache of the Election Commission of India.
That's easier said than done, right? The Election Commission of India today is saying that they can't announce elections for Maharashtra because they're focusing on J&K and Haryana. And we expect them to do one nation, one election. We're pretty far from that point right now. Now, what problem are we actually solving for here is actually the question. It looks like the BJP is frankly solving for the problem of one messenger, one leader in their own party, who's asking Mr. Modi to be the campaigner-in-chief for every election, thereby letting governance suffer, as he puts it. And the other reasons also that have been paraded around by them are frankly don't, hold water at all. The expenses for parliament are less than 0.02% of 5 years of the union budget. State elections budget comes out of that. And the Election Commission themselves has said that if you want to do these elections simultaneously, then you'll have to end up spending something like 10,000 crores every 15 years for new VVPATs. They have also said that welfare schemes and development work is suspended. Which welfare schemes and development work is suspended? Those that are ongoing during an election. Only if there's a critical disbursement. That also, frankly, can be sought, permission for that can be sought from the Election Commission. Ashwini Kumar said that this is important for India to become a developed country. What does this have to do with becoming a developed country? In the US, they have federal, state, and local elections. None of them are held at the same time. And I cannot understand how this works to strengthen our democracy. In state elections, they offer space to much smaller regional parties that reflect the aspirations of a diverse set of people. One nation, one election will only marginalize them, doing more harm to our democracy than the meager economic benefit it's supposed to bring.
Okay. Pradeep Bhandari, the question is that before coming up with a reform of this nature, as you have tried to project this as, or a drastic change, I would say, the question should also be asked that are we really ready for an exercise of this nature? Yes, the opposition's concern is federal structure. It's almost like an experiment which is happening without any preparation.
Well, Maria, good evening to the viewers of NDTV. Maria, we believe in the essence of the Indian Constitution that the opposition keeps speaking about, but does not intend to implement it in the letter and spirit. Now, let's go back to when the Indian Constitution was implemented. There were successive elections which happened in this country.
Go ahead, Pradeep. Go ahead.
Yes. So let us go back to the essence of the entire debate. The essence of the entire debate is when the Constitution was brought into force, that is in 1950. After that, successive elections in this country, when Mr. Nehru was the Prime Minister, happened as one nation, one election. The disruption to this happened when Indira Gandhi had to went back to the people, dissolved her alliance with the DMK, that was somewhere in the late 60s, and went and disrupted this entire process of one nation, one election, which was what our Constitution makers initially envisaged. So had this been against the basic structure of the Constitution, had this been against the federal structure of the Constitution, then definitely Mr. Nehru would not have allowed it to happen. Point number one. Now let's take 30 years from 1950. That is in 1983 when the Election Commission again recommended that we should go back to one nation, one election. 1997, another decade later, the Law Commission said that we should go back to one nation, one election. And in 1988, when the Congress Party, there was a discussion in the Rajya Sabha, the copy of which I have it here, the Congress Party representative who was representing at that time also backed one nation, one election. So let us understand that historically, if you see, one nation, one election is what the Constitution of India represented, reflected, and the spirit of the Indian Constitution was. That is point number one. Now, point number two, this is to debate with the finances of it. Yes, that is definitely one issue. Now, on the part of the local elections, Maria, we are very, very well aware that the local elections are held by the state election commissions and they are happening after 100 days.
One argument is, Pradeep, how is curtailing, because one nation, one election will involve curtailing certain democratically elected assemblies. How will that really strengthen democracy?
Maria, that is an exception, because in order to implement that, you will have to reduce the term or extend the term of certain assemblies. So it's not just curtailing. Are you removing or reducing any power of any assembly? Absolutely not. Let me give you two instances of it. At this moment in this country, in Odisha and in Andhra Pradesh, if I am very well aware about, the elections happen simultaneously. You don't have the national parties doing very well in these two elections. And if you see the election results of 2014, 19 and 2024 in Odisha and 2014, 19 and 2024 in Andhra Pradesh, you will not see any direct causation that a party which wins in the center wins the proportionate seat in the state. So you have the electorate differentiating between what they are voting at the same time in a state election and a national election. On the part of the democratic right, we are not taking away any fundamental right of the citizen, neither are we taking away any right of the assemblies. We are only talking about, for the first instance, either expanding the term of certain assemblies where the BJP might also be in power, and also reducing the term of certain assemblies where the BJP state government could have also been in power. So once this is implemented in letter and spirit, it will be a 5-year tenure.
Initially,
now, at this moment, if you talk,
initially it will be disruptive. Initially, it will be disruptive, Professor Sandeep Shastri. But the pros and cons, as has been explained by the former
Can I answer that with a 1 second response, Maria? Maria, just 10 seconds on that, this initial disruption, just 5 seconds in fact.
Go ahead.
if you remember when the initial GST was also implemented, you had to bring a substantial changes in the way the states and the center had functioned. So yes, there will be an initial disruption in order to implement what the constitution makers had envisaged.
Okay. But Professor Sandeep Shastri, in the larger interest, you know, be it the additional expenditure or the voter fatigue that we keep talking about, you know, voter fatigue has been a major issue because of low voter turnout that we are seeing in multiple elections. Do you think all that will be solved with one nation, one election, as is being talked by the Ram Nath Kovind panel?
Maria, I think we need to distinguish between the idea and the imagination it creates.
Yes.
The idea of one nation, one poll looks very sanitized, very clean, very managerially efficient, very clinically perfect. So we are looking at the administrative cost, fiscal cost, yes. And I concede that argument. But what about the political costs? Are we also looking at the political costs that come into play? That I think is also an important issue to keep in mind. Maria, I would just like to share 2-3 data points for everyone's consideration. Reference was made to when the cycle of elections of states and the center changed. Let me remind everyone that cycle changed in 1967 onwards.
That's right.
Till then, by and large, the cycle was the same. And that cycle changed because in many states of India in 1967, coalition governments were formed which collapsed, causing a poll, and then that cycle got disrupted. So I think that particular fact we must keep in mind. Secondly, a second data point. Whenever we have had simultaneous national and state elections, in whichever states we have had same time elections, there is no dramatic difference in the verdict in the two elections. There may be some seats here, some seats there, more percentage here, more percentage there, but the direction of the verdict has been the same. However, Maria, between 2013 and 2024, if you look at Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha elections, there have been 58 different elections, and in 31 of them, the verdict in the Lok Sabha poll and the verdict in the immediate next assembly poll has been in favor of different parties. Out of 58 cases, in 31 cases, the verdict has been different. The verdict has been the same only in the case of simultaneous verdicts. And the last data point I would suggest is in 22 of these 58 elections, the major parties had a difference of 5 percentage point votes between a Lok Sabha election and an assembly election in a particular state. So, yes, this debate must go on. When you have a simultaneous poll, are we imagining that the national verdict will impact on the state level verdict? If 2024 election is an example, Maria, I think the opposite happened. The 2024 election provided a diversity dividend. The diversity across the states resulted in the type of national verdict that you had. So let's debate this issue. Are we looking at only a clinically sanitized, managerially efficient, once in 5 years election? Or do we also look at the robustness of democracy, the fact that we are an election largely democracy? Should that voter get more opportunities to be able to assert herself? I think is the question we need to ask ourselves. The jury is still out, I think, but the debate needs to continue.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's what the larger messaging also is, that let the debate begin in many ways. But that's very well explained, Professor Shastri. So thank you so much for sharing those insights. So Mohan Kumar Mangalam, statistically, the opposition doesn't have much to worry, even if there are simultaneous polls.
I think even if that, you mean if you take the most recent poll as an example of that, I think I just wanted to make one correction, Maria, option by some state assemblies not being able to serve their entire term, so we get to 5 years. The panel also says that if the government loses its majority midterm, it recommends a fresh election should be held, and also not for the entire term when the fresh election is held. So the term of that government that's elected, which, the election was came about because of a hung assembly or because of a no confidence motion, 5-year term election. So it means that they will not get an entire term. They'll have to go to election twice. How is that actually going to be economically viable, and how is that good for democracy as well? So there is a disruption twice. And we were in one cycle in one election up till 1959 when the EM Nambudri government actually got dismissed. And so then Kerala went on a different cycle. And after that, progressively, there were different events during our entire history which caused states and centers to have elections at different time. And now I think we only are at about 4 or 5 states that have elections at the same time at the central election.
Okay.
Largely, I just want to say that I think this is going to be yet another U-turn of this government. There have been 5 so far already, and this looks set up to be one that's going to be completely unimplementable.
Is it
even
really
assuming that they can actually push it through parliament, which I think won't happen.
You may have announced something that will not be implemented in letter and spirit finally.
Well, Mr. Nehru could have implemented it in the 1950s. Definitely, we can implement it in 2024, Maria. That is point number 1. And yes, the Congress spokesperson was very correct. That was the first time when Article 356 was used in order to dislodge a state government. But just to quote a data point, Maria, that 500 Vidhan Sabha elections roughly have happened, out of which hung verdicts have happened in 30 to 50, which is not even more than 10%. So whenever you make a rule or come with a policy, you make with the trend, not make with an exceptions. Exceptions will happen in anything. So what we are talking about is a case of exceptions. Also on the point, Maria, just to give you an example, in Odisha, again I want to reiterate at the cost of repetition, in 2014 and 19, a national party was not in dominance in Odisha. So if you look at the larger debate that, okay, fine, if the national parties will have a prominence on it, it could, even in 2014 and 19, you did not see that trend happening. Even in Andhra Pradesh, you did not see that trend happening. So we should believe in the wisdom of the Indian voters. They know how to differentiate between elections. And in fact, if it happens simultaneous, you might see a scenario where the voting percentage will increase further because voters will be more conscious about their choice once in 5 years, particularly in a national and a state election.
Yes, Mohan?
Can I just rebut that for 1 minute?
I'll give the last word to Dr. Qureshi.
One of the reasons, I'll just say that my experience, and I think it's statistically proven out as well, polling percentages are higher the more local the election is. If really the goal is to increase our polling percentages, our turnout, then the best way to do that would have been to actually combine it with the local. Let me finish. You can go look up the data if you want to. There are data points, by the way, available. Okay. You have to have combined the panchayat or local body elections with the assembly and parliamentary elections. That would actually have encouraged a higher turnout.
Later stage, because it will be done in the phase-wise manner.
I know, so you won't. I know, which is why I'm saying that
is
defeats the purpose
2.
of. If the purpose
but Maria,
of the goal
it is logical that if you want to go to the polling booth once and in that
then
same,
you should get local body into
Maria,
this
look at the voting percentage of Odisha elections and compare it to a Bihar. Just to quote that, look at the voting percentage in an Odisha assembly election and compare that to a Bihar. So there is a trend. If you go once to the voting station, there is a possibility that the voting percentage can increase. I'm not saying it is with certainty, but that is a possibility. Okay. But that's a secondary argument.
Qureshi, please continue.
My primary argument is a
Dr. Qureshi,
argument.
the last word to you as someone who knows the logistical challenge that is involved in conducting an exercise, democratic electoral process of this nature. It may be very, very ambitious to say one nation, one election will become a reality by 2029. But what do you think should be done in order to achieve that?
Well, you mentioned logistical issue and challenge. Election Commission has spelled it out very clearly that they can do the election if asked to do it simultaneously, but they require 3 times the number of EVMs, 3 times the number of VVPATs, more security, more electoral personnel. Now, when I say 3 times the machine, at the moment we have, say, about 20 lakh machines, and we will require 60 lakh machines and 60 lakh VVPATs. Now, 40 lakhs extra cannot be produced out of thin air. They will take 2, 3 years, 4 years to manufacture, and they cost a lot of money, about 15,000 for each machine, multiplied by 40 lakhs. So Kurosa's idea was to save money. Here you will be spending a lot of money, and it will take a lot of time. That is the logistical issue, no doubt.
All right, Dr. Qureshi, thank you so much for joining us. Professor Sandeep Shastri, Pradeep Bhandari, and Mohan Kumar Mangalam. That's all from me. Thanks so much for watching. But this discussion is going to continue by Vishnu Shom, who's joining here right in the studio in Left, Right and Center. Vishnu.
That's right. One nation, one poll. It's an exciting idea, but it comes with challenges. But there's breaking news, Maria, coming in from Lebanon, where after pagers, we are told that walkie-talkies are now exploding in the last hour. At least one person has lost their life, and dozens, we are told, may be injured. We've also got a lot more on the program, including an exclusive report on how China may be strengthening its military through the construction of a heliport east of Arunachal Pradesh. We'll explain the ramifications of that. All that and a lot more coming up right here on Left, Right and Center after this short break.